Hey there. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Champions. This is a superhero game that's been around since the 80s. I definitely want to run a session or 5 of it. So I've created like this little scenario to show you a little bit of the mechanics. When you make a character, you have points to spend. In fact, let me just find an example of a finished character here. Here we go. So let's see here. There you go. So basically you have characteristics and you get right around 300 points to spend. Now if you want more points, you can take what are called disadvantages, sometimes called complications. And this is classic comic book stuff, even though my game is going to give it a little bit of a futuristic infinity-like spin. In fact, we'll be using a lot of figures from that. So basically, like this guy's hunted by the FBI, and so for example, like the classic Spider-Man and Mary Jane thing would be what's called a dependent. So on a certain role, your dependent will show up. So these are actually good because they help the story along, and they kind of not only give you extra points to spend, but also allow you to integrate your character into the story. So you buy your abilities, and 10 is average. So this guy shows the cost of them. And then there's a roll. So all the rolls are made on a 3d6. And so let's say your roll were a 12, or, excuse me, an 11 or less, which is average. So you just roll that. And if you got, so this adds up to 10. So that would be successful because you got an 11 or under. And that's how skill rolls work. And it's kind of the basic mechanic of the whole game. So for example, your intelligence gives you a perception roll. So to notice something, this character, because his intelligence is above average, 10 is like a normal person. So he would need a 13 or less to notice something. So here you'd get an 11, and that would be successful. So that's the first mechanic, is characteristic rolls and skill rolls. And a character, incidentally, has typically their powers, which are like superpowers. And then you buy perks, which are like advantages in society, like contacts and stuff, talents, and then skills. And skills obviously have roles to them that are based on your characteristics. And okay, so let's say supervillain Tesseract here fires an energy bolt at the green lizard. And so he has to make an attack roll. So they both have what's called offensive combat value and defensive combat value. A normal human will have 3. An average hero might have 5 or 6. 7 to 9 is like really high. So like if your combat values are 9, that's going to make it very easy for you to hit things and very hard to be hit. So let's say his offensive combat value is 7 and hers defensive combat value is 8. So the basic roll is an 11 or less on your 3 dice again. So whatever person has the advantage, it skews the roll by that amount in their favor. There's a mathematical formula, but this is a better way of explaining it. So since her defense is 1 higher than his offensive combat value, it makes it 1 harder for the roll. So it starts out at an 11 base, which is average. In fact, let's get rid of these things. So it becomes 1 harder, so he actually needs a 10 to hit with his energy bolt. And he rolls a 10, so that barely hits. Now, let's say the green lizard had, let's say she's on her last legs. She can give up her next action, half of her next action, to do a dodge, which would give her +3 to her DCV. So that would actually have made this miss. But anyway, so it hit. So an energy blast, typically 8d6 damage is, kind of a middle, and 8 to 10 is kind of a middle and, middle of the road thing there. So now he's going to roll his damage. So he hit. So the damage done is of 2 types. There's stun. So like in the comic books, you notice they get all beat up, but they never actually get hurt. And that's because they're taking stun. So they might be stunned, and then you can recover. This whole system, by the way, really gives the total feel of, sort of cinematic comic book style, fights. And it's a lot of fun to make your character, as I'll explain in just a minute. So the energy blast does 8d6. So we roll them, and then we add them up. So there's 10, 20, 29, 32 damage. And then, so it does stun and body. So body is actually what you can die from, and you typically don't take that much body. So she takes 32 stun, and the body is 1 point per dice, but you get a bonus for a 6 and a penalty of 1 for a 1. So this has no 1, so this counts for 2, basically. So this does 9 body. So then we take a look at Green Lizard. So let's say it was this character instead. And you look at physical defense and energy defense. So energy defense is against energy attacks, physical defense is against physical attacks like, you know, punches and a car landing on you and stuff like that. So this is energy. So 24, 32 minus 24, she would take 8 points of stun. And this guy, for example, has 30 stun. So it's almost like hit points. Now, once you take all your stun, you go unconscious, but you can recover those during the battle. They just naturally come back, and that's stun points. Now, if you take more stun than your constitution of 18 in one shot, then you actually are stunned for a phase from that. So, okay, and body, you apply the same amount. So you notice the body is a lot less. It's only 1 point per dice, but you still apply the total defense to it. So you'd have to take a lot of body to actually get hurt in this. And so that's it. So now let's say the next phase. Oh, and by the way, let's see if I can find this in the rule book. Okay. Oh, I just had it. I opened right to it because I'm amazing like that. But then I lost it. There it is. So every character has speed. So the average speed is like 4 to 6. So if you have speed of 4, the combat goes, we start on phase 1, so nobody goes typically. Then phase 2, phase 3. So if you had speed 4, you'd go on phase 3, 6, 9, and 12. And then after 12, there's a recovery phase. So you get to like get back stun and stuff like that. So anyway, so that's how the combat goes, and you determine who goes on what phase. So now let's say supervillain Red Dawn here tromps across. So he uses half of his phase to do a movement, and then he does a hand-to-hand attack. So let's say he bought what's called a killing attack, which is like bullets and knives and stuff that's actually gonna kill you. So let's say his claw is a killing attack. So typically killing attacks won't be this many dice. They'll actually just be like a gun is only 2 or 3 dice of killing. So let's say, so now let's roll to hit. So let's say his combat value is 5 and her defensive combat value is 7. So that's 2 in her favor. And I'm running out of time here. So that means he needs a 9 or less to hit. So, oh, wow. So that actually would hit. Amazingly enough, she should have dodged. Come on, Green Lizard. So let's say his killing attack is 3d6. So that would, and then, so this would just be body, straight up. So it would be 7 body done. And unless she had resistant defense, like armor and stuff, she would actually take that off of her body characteristic, which could be only like 10 or 20. So you can actually kill people with what are called killing attacks. All right, guys, that's the basics of the game. And, oh, I did want to talk to you just for a second on powers. So when you make your character, you get points. So, for example, you want to have mind control. So it costs 5 points per 1d6 of mind control. So typically a hero only has like 2 or 3 powers, because you have to like narrow it down. So just like in the comic books, to be good, you have to operate as a team, because unless you're some kind of jack of all trades, typically you can't be very good at, like really good at very many things. And it's certainly nice to have like one really, really, really amazing power. So you pick your powers, you can customize them to be exactly what you want, and telekinesis, stuff like that. And yeah, you end up with your character. So it's very customizable. You can have a lot of fun with it. And quite frankly, my dream for this is to get 4 players initially, run 2 or 3 sessions. That's it, just for fun. And if we like it, I will introduce more people, but have them working at cross purposes. So a game might not just be me and the players, but it might be 2 groups of players who are working against each other, which I think will be an absolute load of fun. And we're going to use cool figures and have like just, you know, neat villains. I've already got good stories going on in my head, and it's going to be an absolute lot of fun. Thanks for tuning in.